Hello, I'm Dennis. I live in Scotland and I've been growing orchids for about 25 years now. For over 40 years I had been interested in the batch flower remedies, and then in the early 1990s I was introduced to orchids by two orchid essence makers, one in Germany, one from California. When I try to explain flower essences to people that aren't familiar with them, I often use acupuncture as a means of explaining. Because just as we have qi that flows along our meridians and through the body, plants too have the same qi coursing through their whole leaf structure and root structure and stems, and it kind of gets concentrated in the bloom, in blooming time. And so when we make a flower essence, what we're trying to do is to convey some of that bioelectric energy, some of that qi, into water, and then we hold it there. It gives it shelf life by adding a bit of alcohol. The alcohol anchors the qi, holds the qi in the bottle. It would explain why we have created just over 100 different orchid essences over the 23 years that I've been making orchid essences. And we've also created about 80 combination essences, combining the different single orchid essences for specific blockages and traumas, etc. Well, to us that seems like an awful lot, but when I stop and think about the Orchidaceae, 25 to 30,000 species out there, how many hybrids have we created? Maybe 500,000. The possibilities for research in the decades ahead is simply staggering. I can't see any end to the possibilities of creating new essences in the fullness of time. It's almost like pop music. There will always be new songs. So part of what I want to mention here is that my interest came from learning about orchids from a flower essence standpoint, and it led me to buy a few thousand orchids over the last 25 years. Well, there are hundreds of thousands of people in the world that are interested in flower essences. So showing them the merits of orchids can broaden the market for orchids. I know that my work was inspired a woman in Austria to build a whole greenhouse just so that she could start growing orchids. I thought I should just mention briefly that my greenhouse, this is my third greenhouse because we recently moved, and I'm quite certain it's the best one that I've had. It's called a polycrub and is a design that was originated in Shetland and has been storm tested to withstand 120 mile-an-hour storm winds. So the orchids seem very comfortable in here, but it's a very strong structure. So I'm quite pleased with it, because up here we need that. We get 100 mile-an-hour winds quite regularly on our island in Scotland. I'll take you down now to the office so you can see the range of what we do. Our making of orchid essences with the orchids that I grow is actually one of the very few commercial uses of orchids that is out there. And unlike the Chinese medicine tradition that would involve chopping up and macerating hundreds or thousands of dendrobium canes for use in Chinese medicine, our process of making these orchid essences actually doesn't involve damaging or killing any of the orchids, because we simply immerse the bloom, either partly or fully, in a bowl of water for 5 or 6 hours, occasionally 24 hours, and then we remove the bloom still attached to the plant, and at that point we add the alcohol, and that gives it shelf life. And some drops of that original mother tincture, as it's called, goes into these small bottles that we then ship out around the world to our various distributors, including to Qipang Chang there in Taiwan. So it's a non-destructive method. That's why I only need one specimen of a given orchid in order to make the essence with it. And as I say, it's one of the very few commercial uses of orchids that we know of. So once again, thank you very much for the kind invitation to give this presentation. I imagine that some of you may be perplexed by some of the information I've shared here, but if you have any questions, then I'm sure that Qipang will be able to answer them and follow up with discussion with you in the weeks and months ahead. So once again, thank you, and all the best.